So, without further ado, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to today's presenters. We have Jennifer Henslick and Aaron Bach, who are both buyers from Anythink Libraries. So I will let you guys take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out. My name is Aaron Bach, and like Christine said, I'm a buyer with Anythink Libraries. I want to thank everybody coming out because it's been a tumultuous week, and this has been really hard sometimes, but it's something that's going to help us and help our communities to be well-informed informational professionals and to help a potential customer base and how we might support them, whether through collection, programming, or reference. This is Puff Puff Lend, Cannabis Culture and Libraries. We're going to start talking about some different topics within cannabis. We're going to cover, like I said, collection, programming, and reference. So the first thing we're going to start with is a simple question that asks what type of library you're from. We're interested in where you're coming from. So if you could go ahead and choose an answer, that'd be great. And this is just more for our interest in seeing how this all works out in the end. All right, looks like we have almost everybody voted. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is something called myth puffers. This is a little thing when I started looking into cannabis and how we might do this type of program. We were going to say whether something is true, false, or trulse. So I'm going to read statements. Everybody gets a chance to vote whether they think the statement is true, whether the statement is false, whether this is trulse. Hopefully this will help us clear up some misconceptions or some ideas we have about cannabis use. So the first statement is cannabis kills brain cells. So go ahead and vote true, false, or trulse. Trulse is one of those, man, there's not enough research one way or the other. True is you're wholeheartedly believe it. False, I don't think this is true at all. And it looks like almost everybody's voted. There we go. I'm going to say this is actually trulse. It can affect short-term memory, but the journal, which is from the Journal of Neuroscience in a study by the University of Louisville, but a recent study by Harvard, Tufts, and McLean show on a medicinal cannabis study, researchers reported no significant detriments in performance, that they actually improved on functions such as the Stroop color word test and trail making test, mostly reflected in increased speed in completing tasks without a loss of accuracy. So there may be some short-term side effects, but it doesn't kill brain cells. All right, the next statement we're going to answer is you can get high by eating just the plant. So go ahead and give me a true, false, or trulse. And I know we probably have some quick Googlers out there, but we'll see what we can do here.
And Aaron, this is Christine. We have a quick question
Yes.
while people are
Sure.
voting. For the previous question, Colleen was wondering if that depends on age. For instance, people under 21 should be more careful.
We have a question that kind of goes about that in a little bit. Yeah, but yes, it is one of those things where age can, under a certain age, usually teenagers and younger, can have brain changes. It's true. Okay, looks like we're almost done here. True, false, or trulse. You're gonna get high by eating just the plant. I actually switched this one up. I am now going to say this is trulse. I've been reading a lot about it, and most cannabinoids must be activated by heat, so you can burn it to get the full THC effect. But if you eat enough raw marijuana, you can get high off of it. It is a different compound that is getting you high, THCA, but it is still something that if you ate a lot of it, you can get high. So we'll go with Charles on that one. The next one is marijuana is addictive. True, false, or Charles? Okay, looks like we have almost everybody voted here. We're gonna say it is Trolls, but this is a controversial statement. Marijuana can be addictive over time. Overstimulation of the endocannabinoid system by marijuana can cause changes in the brain, but not everybody believes that. That's from drugabuse.gov. There are people that don't think that happens, and there hasn't been enough studies to fully make this a real statement. All right, the next statement is cannabis can reshape your brain. We might have given away this one already. So get your answer in if you haven't gotten it in. All right, cannabis can reshape your brain. We're going with true. But tweens and teens can have abnormalities happen in their brain if they can casually consume marijuana while they're growing. Does not happen to adults. So this is the under 21ers should be careful, yes, or they should not smoke it at all. All right. The next statement is most people that smoke pot are potheads. All right, almost everybody has their answer in. And we're going to go with false on this one. From the Journal of Neuroscience, only 6 out of 40 million, or 15%, use marijuana on a daily basis. So it is much more of a part-time thing than it is a full-time thing for lots of people. All right, the next statement is cannabis is a gateway drug. So mostly true, mostly false, mostly false. Almost done here. And we're going to actually go with false on this one. It shows that THC may prime your brain for enhanced experience to other drugs, but it does not mean you will move on to other drugs. You have the same response with alcohol and nicotine that THC causes. It is not a specific thing from THC. All right, and the last true, false, or false, driving while stoned is as bad as being drunk. Or is safer than driving intoxicated. All right, we have all of our answers in, and actually, I'm gonna say Charles on this one. I'm not advocating driving while stoned; it is bad for you. But according to the U.S. Department of Transportation traffic safety facts, it is much less likely to cause an accident if you are driving stoned or than driving drunk. So, just a couple facts there for you. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is how your state looks. The 2016 election has created new and unique changes within retail and medical marijuana. legality, and the new laws that are put in place on November 22nd are the new laws that are put in place on November 22nd are going to see these changes. And do we have the next slide there, Christine? Thank you. This is what this is how the nation looks now as of the 22nd. Before, there were only 23 medical states that allowed medical marijuana, but afterwards there are 29, including Washington, D.C. 4 states that have legalized marijuana for retail, and 4 more that were added this year. The 8 states that have legalized for retail are Alaska, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. Montana went and rolled back many of the restrictions that were put into place since their medical marijuana passed in 2004. All told, nearly a quarter of U.S. residents will live in states that allow recreational use of marijuana. The only state that did not have their marijuana ballot passed was the recreational vote in Arizona. So it is something that many of your customers that will be having questions about, or maybe you're just interested in or want to start new things or do something with it, you will have questions, and hopefully we can help you answer some of those. All right. And so here's there are some problems, or people are having issues with this. The first thing is there was a UC Davis article that published about how, on average, persistent cannabis use from middle-class origins attained lower adult socioeconomic status than did their parents, even after they controlled for sex, ethnicity, family, substance dependence, history, childhood, IQ, history of psychopathology, all those sorts of things. They experience downward mobility when using cannabis. So that's just one study that did this. One of the other things is that we'll notice that there are not that many studies about cannabis use because it is a Schedule I drug. The next thing is not all states are appreciative when states legalize marijuana. The state of Colorado was sued by both Nebraska and Oklahoma, and they filed the lawsuit directly with the nation's highest court. It was eventually overturned, but then they went back in and have tried to reintroduce their lawsuit into another thing. The lawsuit says that the states have suffered increased costs from arrests, impoundment of vehicles, seizure of contraband, transfer of prisoners, and other problems associated with marijuana. Okay. So even though it was thrown out by the U.S. Supreme Court, there was asking to be added to the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. I have a question in the chat that says, I keep hearing that MJ is slated to be rescheduled, but nothing seems to come of it. Are those rumors just wishful thinking? Yes, I believe so. The last I'd heard, it is still a Schedule I drug, and that was done during the middle of this year. So it does not appear that it's going to be rescheduled at this point. The next thing is how the nation views marijuana. Even though there are nearly one quarter of these states that have legalized it, from an outside view, it's not all positive. Can anyone name who this quote is from? But I'm getting some very negative reports out of Colorado as to what's happening. Does anybody know who said that? And this is in regard to weed, to marijuana. Yes, you're correct, Nala. It was Donald Trump. So, and even within Colorado, there's been issues where there's things like the Cannabis Cup moving out of Adams County and Pueblo and into Southern California. And even within certain cities, such as Pueblo, that had a measure to stop marijuana for sales recreationally within city limits. It lost the vote by only 1.5%, so it's still available recreationally, but it is not a full state thing. You can definitely go to cities that don't sell marijuana. All right, so we have some Colorado facts for those interested in the different things that we've seen here, 102,316 medical marijuana card carriers. That's down a little, about 6,000 since earlier this year. Legalization has lowered the total number of card carrying users. But there have been almost 340,000 applicants since the registry began. There are over 1.2 million medical marijuana patients worldwide. Within Colorado, there are 454 retail marijuana stores and 528 medical marijuana centers. This is big business for lots of people. There has been of cannabis, both recreational and medical. There's been over $600 million sold within 2016, with an estimate on $1.35 billion sold between the two. And Lynn says, my town of Thornton, Colorado only recently permitted pot shops and just approved taxing it on November 8th. And NH says, what do travelers experience when carrying it and their med card? I'll talk about that a little bit later too, but medical marijuana cards don't travel between states. It is a state-by-state thing, but you can legally hold up to an ounce if you are from out of state. But we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So $408 million were sold medical of 2015, and $588 million were sold recreationally for 2015. So almost $1 billion and easily over $1.35 billion expected to sell of marijuana in just this year. So it is big, big, big business. All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about, I am new to this thing, or I'm interested in doing it. What might I learn? So this is for all the noobs. There's generally two types of plants, sativa and indica. Sativa plants are tall, loosely branched, and have long, narrow leaves. They're usually grown outdoors and can reach heights of up to 20 feet. Indica plants are short, densely branched, and have wider leaves. They are better suited for growing indoors. Sativa are known as uplifting and energetic highs, cerebral, spacey, or hallucinogenic. Indica are known to have a relaxing and calm body buzz or couch lock, best suited for night use. All right, we can go to the next slide there. We're going to talk a little bit about terpenoids and cannabinoids. So terpenoids, as you see by the giant nose, handle scent or flavor. There can be up to 120 different odors: pine, earthy, mint, pepper, basil, apple, orange blossoms are all just a few of the things. Cannabinoids, on the other hand, are the different components of the sativa plant that are unique chemicals associated with the plant. The most well-known cannabinoid is THC. THC is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is a mouthful. That's why everybody says THC. Is the primary substance responsible for the psychoactive effect of cannabis. Let's see here, and I have another suggestion. My medical librarian group included advice about pot use while at our Denver meeting, and some visited the shop while we were here to learn more. And so you'll see here that there are lots of different types. THCA, you'll see what we talked about when you eat it, versus THC. Then you can kind of choose your high based on what effects you want, whether you're for medical or for just recreational use. All right. The last thing is, here's a little bit more about Colorado. You might want to check your local laws, but this is generally what is done here. You have to be 18 or older to get a medical card, 21 or older, and you can smoke recreationally. 1 ounce purchased at a time in state, a quarter ounce out of state purchasers. So like I said, you can carry up to 1 ounce if you're out of state, but you can only purchase at each store a quarter ounce at a time. So you would have to visit 4 different stores. So if you're here on vacation, that's what you'll need to do. You'll see the 6 plants. You can grow up to 6 plants within Colorado, but you can only have 3 that are blooming at a time. And 2 ounces are legal for medical in-state to be holding. And when you purchase marijuana, you can get or THC, you can get mix and match edibles, flowers, and concentrates as long as you're within your grams. So whether you're at your 7 grams or your 28 grams, your ounce or your quarter ounce. And when you go to shop at the different stores, you will have someone at the dispensary that helps bud tend for you. They'll explain the different strains and how they make you feel. Most will only take cash because most banks will not take the money. Since it is a federal crime still, they just deal in cash only. Uh, what they've been trying to do within the state of Colorado is open a credit union to have their own way to put money into banks. But that's one of those things you'll see. And certain cities within Colorado don't sell recreational marijuana, such as Colorado Springs. And on the other hand, other cities such as Denver have passed a bill allowing consumption in bars as restaurants as long as the facilities apply for a permit and obtain approval from a local neighborhood organization. So that's going to be happening on the 22nd here in Denver. All right, so you've gone shopping. Now you were interested in how you're going to smoke. There's different options. You'll see here that you have your plain joint on the left. That is just rolling papers and usually a little filter. You have your blunt, which is a hollowed out cigarette or cigar. You have your edibles, is abstracted through fat soluble options and then put into products. The one thing that they recommend is to be careful with these, as they can have a high amount of THC and it takes much longer to absorb into your bloodstream. So smoking it gets you high much quicker. Eating it takes a longer time for you to get high. But 2.8 million units of over 2.8 million units of retail edible products sold in 2014. The last two options you have are something like you have a bong or tobacco water pipe. People claim that the use of water pipe filtration system primarily cools the cannabis smoke. It doesn't usually eliminate toxic byproducts, though. We have a vaporizer, which is a smokeless cannabis vaporizer device. Delivers the same levels of THC, but it doesn't get as hot, so it may stop some of the harmful products within THC. There still hasn't been enough done to say whether this is true or not. Then there's articles on the wire talking about how bad batteries can happen and things like that. So it's just something you have to look out for. The other thing I'll mention is I didn't get a picture of it, but you can also, there's people that are doing something called dabbing. Dabbing is inhaling a vapor from a concentrated form of marijuana formed by the extraction of using butane gas, also known as butane hash oil. It is something for people who are looking to consume a high amount of THC in a very short amount of time. All right. And the last thing is get out there and practice before coming to the state of Colorado. There's videos online, all those sorts of fun things. You can do it with basil leaves, is how we've done it in the past during our programming. And the video can be found there. There's a link in chat. So if you thought this was a huge amount of information and there are lots of options, think of our customers. How will they react to starting cannabis, consuming cannabis? Now we focus on librarians and libraries and how they're supporting customers through a library collection. Take it away, Jen.
Hi, everybody. The first thing I want to do is open with a quick little poll about what your library does concerning cannabis materials. So tell me what your library does. Do you collect cannabis positive materials? Don't know. You do. Huh. Interesting. So it's interesting. We're kind of split three ways, which is a little bit different from the survey I'm going to talk about here in a second. Okay. Collect materials on both points of view. Excellent. All right. Thank you for giving me that information. That helps me a lot. Oops. So, when we first started talking about cannabis resources and the library's role in supporting our communities, I didn't really have an idea of what other libraries were doing. I knew we had been buying books before recreational weed was legal, but I also knew we were a fairly progressive library. With that in mind, I launched a brief survey asking folks what they do and don't do and how they feel about materials and programming. This went out throughout the United States, so there's a good chance you might have seen this on some listservs. Um, the responses ranged from curiosity, my worry about the discrepancies between state and federal law, to wholehearted support, to the vehemently opposed. I have even been told I was ashamed to my profession. So, truthfully, every type of response only fueled my conviction to start pushing the conversation out into the library community. Why? Out of the hundreds of responses I received, 51.6% were in a library that purchased cannabis positive materials. 29.3% did not, and 19.1% did not know if their library did or didn't collect cannabis materials. That is a huge amount of folks who simply aren't aware of their collection. Here's my stance on it. I look at the conversation about cannabis culture and libraries as the way it used to be to talk about graphic novels. Sure, the library might have a few, but many librarians felt no obligation to understand why readers enjoyed graphic novels or to actively grow their knowledge to better support the readership. Like a lot of us, I was handed the job of ordering graphic novels because no one else wanted it. I didn't know my Batman from Fruits Basket at the time, but I dove in, learned with my different audiences, and built a strong collection that brought people in and excited about the library. Books on marijuana aren't really that different. The community is out there. It is growing. No pun intended. Okay, pun intended. Part of our culture. Heck, even Lee Child confesses that he has smoked cannabis 5 nights a week for 44 years, and we really like his books. Our communities need reliable sources of information, and the last time I checked, that was a big part of our job. If you build it, they will come. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about theft here in a little bit. Okay, but Jen, you say, what would a marijuana collection even look like? We don't want to look like the library has succumbed to reefer madness. My first response is don't panic. I promise there is a lot more out there than just Stoners Are Us or Potheads 101. But also, let's talk about this. So, conversation starter, what type of marijuana topics can you see being housed by the library? Share your thoughts in the chat area. Cookbooks, yes. Business. Medical marijuana, absolutely. Pros and cons, very important to have a balanced collection. History and home growing, absolutely. Pairing marijuana with foods like cocktails. Calling out just the book for you here, coming up soon. Okay, so there are clearly several different aspects to cannabis culture that you can find in books. Magazines like High Times, ebooks, music, DVDs, even in online options such as Hoopla. I am limiting specific titles here to books, but know that the subject areas are represented in multiple formats. So with that in mind, here are a couple of areas you can build your collection. Okay, as we've seen unfold in Colorado, marijuana is big business, and there's a lot of money to be made, which leads to a lot of folks wondering if this is the right business step for them. There are also folks, whether it be for recreational or medicinal use, who want to learn how to grow their own. Some of the titles in this area include Big Weed, An Entrepreneur's High Stakes Adventures in the Budding Legal Marijuana Business by Christian Hagaseth. This also has a strong memoir feel to it. Marijuana Horticulture, The Indoor-Outdoor Medical Grower's Bible by George Cervantes. This one, I went to Barnes & Noble just to see the types of titles that they had available for customers. And, usually they'll have one, maybe two if it's super popular or a bestseller of a title. And the Marijuana Horticulture, they had 6 different copies of it, so that tells me that this might be the one that you really need to have on your shelves, that it's really popular and the demand is pretty high. And then Start and Run a Marijuana Dispensary by Rosie Moden and James Pulitzer. This one has been trying to be published for about a year now, and it was just published in October. And I couldn't figure out why that was happening, but one of our consultants from Women Grow, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation, clued me in that the dispensary laws keep changing. It's very young. We're still learning things and changing things. And so every time something changed, I had to go back and rewrite. Okay, more than the munchies. There was a meme going around in 2012 that the cost of Doritos in Denver was about to go up to $19.99 or some such silliness. Munchies do happen, but here I am referring to titles that help you cook with cannabis in more ways than just brownies. Titles include Cannabis Cocktails, Mocktails and Tonics, The Art of Spirited Drinks and Buzzworthy Libations. Sweet Mary Jane, 75 Delicious Cannabis-Infused High-End Desserts by Karen Lazarus, who has a restaurant in Boulder, Colorado, also called Sweet Mary Jane. And 100 Cannabis Recipes That Boost Your Health But Won't Get You High by Women Publishing. I put this on here because it's important to point out we're trying to have a little fun here, try to get people comfortable with what we're talking about. But seriously, there are a lot of people that use marijuana to help them or their loved ones with serious debilitating illnesses. And I think that's something as librarians we can't overlook. Okay, but then I got a high. This area of titles was unfamiliar to me until I bought a book for the library that I thought was a clever title about books to read with certain strains, and I got it really wrong on that one. So, first title, Stoner Coffee Table Book by Steve Marcus. Here you have a cat, you have cupcakes, and you have science. This is the librarian trifecta, and what is there not to love about this book? Get Lost in the Woods, Books to Get High to by Ryan Washington. This is the book that I accidentally purchased thinking that it was going to give me titles that you could pair with strains, which is a pet project of mine. This is a book that can only be fully appreciated while stoned. It is literally full of pages of out-of-focus pictures of the woods, with a few words here and there to have a profound moment. The Official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, 420 Things to Do When You're Stoned by David Bienstock. What books can we find that will give information to customers on how THC might affect them depending on what medical conditions they have? For example, there are several different books that can cover that. There is one in our handout, and I believe it's called Medical Dispensary. But anything that focuses on medical marijuana is probably going to guide you in that direction. I can touch base with you after the program and give you a few titles. One that I don't have here on this handout is, I think, deserves a mention because we have it in our handouts. Polly K. Mangus is a Colorado artist, and she created a Colorado cannabis adult coloring book, which is readily available. But one of the nicest things she did was she gave us permission to provide a coloring page for you to enjoy, which you will find in the handout section. If you get stressed out or something, it's a lot of fun to color. Okay, a nice blend. I also wanted to hit on a few other types of books out there to give you a well-rounded picture of the resources available. How to Smoke Pot Properly, A Highbrow Guide to Getting High by David Bienstock. As marijuana becomes legal in more and more states, there becomes a need for folks to fancify the experience, if you will. I like to say that this type of book is for smokers who say, "Whoa, sir," instead of "Whoa, dude." Okay, Stinky Steve Explains Medical Marijuana, an educational children's book about cannabis by Maggie Volpole. This is a whole series. The Stinky Steve series is an entire series of children's books that are published by the Michigan Cannabis Business Association. So you have a reliable source here. Their goal is to help parents educate their children and also themselves on different ways that their children might encounter marijuana in their day-to-day life and how to best process it and deal with it. Mary Jane, the Complete Marijuana Handbook for Women by Sharisa Cart. The stereotypical idea of who smokes pot tends to be a younger male, when the truth is women are also just as likely to use cannabis. In fact, our Women Grow Leadership Summit had over 1,000 attendees in 2015. Okay, difficulties. As with any potentially controversial collection, there can be difficulties associated with cultivating a cannabis positive collection. Taking a moment to give some thought to challenges that might come up brings us to our next conversation. What difficulties do you see with a cannabis positive collection in the library? Give your answers in the chat box. Nobody sees any difficulties with it? Cool. The kids ones, major book challenges. Challenges from patrons, theft. One of the responses we had at PLA was that they couldn't purchase such titles because they were tied to the city and the city scrutinized everything that they bought. But what about the children? Yes. Being in the middle between state law and federal law is a bummer. Yes. Yes. And campaign promises don't necessarily become reality, but that could potentially be an issue moving forward. Okay, so community and library concerns is a big one that we tend to have. Taking another look at our survey, only 3.5% of the responders had pushback from their library, and 8.6% for their community. The most important thing you can do, and I say this for any collection, is to find a balance that accurately represents your community. If you live in a conservative community, you aren't going to want to have a huge collection. You're not going to buy all these books and have a beautiful display right as everybody is walking in the front door. That is probably not going to go well for you. But you should also have a small collection of the basics that is going to reach those members of your community that are not the majority. So you're providing a well-rounded collection for your community. Theft. Cannabis culture books do have a higher rate of theft, not unlike other books in our collection, sex books, urban lit, GED books. I don't know how many times I've bought A Child Called It, but that doesn't stop me from buying it. Theft is a part of our business, and I recommend falling back on your collection development policy as you would with any high theft subject. Okay, Books and Buds. This is a little pet project of mine, Reader's Advisory project of mine. If you've never read a review for the different strains of marijuana, you might be surprised that they read a lot like wine review or even a book review. They're very eloquent and expressive and tend to focus on emotions and moods generated by the strain. As I started reading a few, being a Reader's Advisory nerd, I started seeing different pairings with different books. We provide Reader's Advisory services based on a whole lot of different things: genre preferences, moods, reading styles, and even personal tattoos, which we've seen come out in the last year. Why not with marijuana strain preferences? So here are my examples. The Bob Ross strain has been described as like getting hit with the biggest silk pillow and falling into a pool of chocolate pudding. It is a little bit happy mixed with a little bit quirky. There is a creative side to its effects, and with that in mind, I've paired it with Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. Why? Good literature knows no age limit, and they both were artists who like to draw happy little trees and spread joy through their craft. The other example I have is Spiritual Punk. And it can be best explained as the person who will give the finger to the cops, but also really digs the vegan restaurant around the corner. Hairstyles of the Damned by Joe Mino pairs well because it is whimsical and relatable, yes, yet has a lot of depth. It is also an angsty, character-driven story that finds solace in punk music. Yes, Lynn, this is exactly where I found these reviews. The Denver Post Cannabis, yes. Um, I've included a handout of several of the book and bud pairings that I've put together, and it's a lot of fun. So if it's something that your community shows interest in, I think that's a good way to build another connection with that community. So now I'm going to turn the reins back over to Aaron, who is going to cover programming.
Thanks, Jennifer. So we are going to finish out here with a little bit on programming. Libraries are interested in connecting with communities that they necessarily might not have talked with before. We say we're hip or trying to be hip, whether we're working with makerspaces or doing different things in the community. And there are lots of programming opportunities available. We have to think of our role in the community, though. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to promote education, have makerspace ideas? A couple of these ideas you could look into are creating new things and engaging with your community. So some of the ideas that I've had and that I think that are interesting out there are doing something like a knowledge learning type of class where you can teach people about different things. You can bring in an expert from outside your group, work with some different community organizations, and maybe have a panel. And we'll have some examples later. The other ideas you could do are build it into your job fair. You have classes on how to get a job, I'm sure, lots of the libraries. You bring people, teach them that there are other avenues out there to getting jobs, especially if you live in one of these states that has just legalized marijuana. The other two are more in the makerspace vein. You could look at creating different oils to use and or creating bags out of hemp, things like that. You can get in there and get crafty with it. It doesn't have to be just about knowledge or just about teaching someone something. It can be having fun and doing something a little bit different as well. And there's a little prompt here. Are there any specific types of programming that you think would be fun or relevant at your library? If you could go ahead and answer that question in the chat, that would be great. Anybody have any good ideas that they think they could utilize with marijuana? Or related to it? Meet an entrepreneur, that's very good. Connecting with dispensaries and having the programs out of the library. Like a Weed 101 course, yeah? And you could even have it in the library as long as you didn't have weed there. Although we've done classes or we've done programs here at our library that have alcohol, so maybe eventually it'll get to the point where you can apply for a one-time license or something like that. Yeah, another great idea, Lynn. What your city or state has rules for starting a business, how you might look into that. All right, thanks for all your programming suggestions. Before you start looking into programming, though, you're going to want to prepare. The first thing you want to do is get your manager involved or whoever you think you need to get involved for the type of programming. Some, if you're just doing a crafty class with hemp or something like that, may not necessarily need to get higher ups involved, but you may want to do something like that. If you're getting into the educational side, and if you get directed to a business or organization that you want to partner with, take advantage of it. Jen was talking about Women Grow and how they are an interesting organization that works with all types of people that are interested in growing or selling marijuana. They're also interested in making sure that people are, if they are transplanted out of states, they can help them, or people that move to a legalized state, they can get the help that they need. So they work with sick and ill people that may need to take advantage of different cannabis laws. The other one is you look at towards your community. That's what these three gentlemen are out there. See what they may want. You don't necessarily need to come up with something right away. You say, hey, what role can we fill? How can we fill this? What can be good about it? Uh, uh, our colleague, I say this is standing on the shoulders of others, our colleague Derek Mason, an Idea Factory librarian at the City County Pueblo Library here in Colorado, created a program that he wanted to share with his community called the Cannabis Education Quest. It was a panel platform that focused on educating the local community on the different sides of cannabis. He asked the panel 5 questions and got various viewpoints on why cannabis education is important for libraries. His feedback for the day included involving library administration right from the very beginning if you're doing something educational. Make sure that you have a well-developed plan that is balanced. Seek strategic partners that would be interested in presenting at your panel, and be prepared for opposition, as it is a difficult topic for certain community groups. The last thing is to look for feedback on how to prepare for the future and make your life easier. The other thing was he wanted to make sure that the panel was balanced so that he had both pros and cons. He wasn't just showing one side of the argument. All right, so another conversation starter is, what challenges do you think would be the most difficult to overcome to have cannabis-related programs at the library? If you would go ahead and answer that question in the chat. City government concerns? It definitely depends. City police concerns? There's a big no pot shops group in my town. So maybe from other community members there might be issues. Maybe you could bring them in on it if you're doing something educational. Perception that the library is advocating for a position. I think that's interesting. It's one of those things where you can look and say, hey, we're not necessarily promoting, but we're just reaching for an audience. Scheduling around children's programming. Yes, we do have lots of children's programming here too. So I know that can be a problem. Any other difficulties that you might have to overcome? Oh, yeah, I understand. It says, Jennifer says, meaning I think it would be perceived very differently than, say, a wine event, or say in Colorado, it's usually more of a beer event. But yes. And up here on the slide, and also on our fact sheet is Derek Mason's contact information. So I would definitely recommend getting a hold of him if you have an interest in working on something educational or any programming ideas. He's a great resource. The other thing I'm thinking about is we're looking at cannabis culture from a bigger picture. We're not just looking at potheads sitting on their couch. We are interested in all different sorts of things. And it is blown up here. So you have something like EaseMD in California, which is an app where you can get a medical referral, get a medical card online, and order cannabis straight to your door all from the one app in about 25 minutes. There's an interesting video out there that shows the guy shows you him going through it. So something like that is available. You have Weed Maps, which is shows the different local marijuana stores that are available. Or you have something like Leafly, which is sort of like Yelp for marijuana. So you can think about, hey, maybe these could just be blended into everyday programming, into technology programming. It doesn't have to be a specific cannabis related program. We can do lots of different things. The other thing out there is a lot of social media and social things. Hi there is a way to meet other people that are interested in cannabis, uh, and it's more of a dating type of thing. Or you have something like Doobie, which is more of a social connect people that have also have interests, but it's less of the dating thing, more just sort of like Facebook for people that smoke. There are lots of new options. You can blend these also in with technology programs. It's not one of those things that you have to be sitting back on. You can say, oh, well, these are options for customers as well. We're trying to be all inclusive. The last thing we can talk about here is get out there. There are different events that you might look into your community and say, hey, where are these people meeting at? What are they doing? We have all these great books that Jen suggested. We started maybe looking at programming here at our library, say, but why don't we get out there and talk to the community that's out there? So this is a picture of 420 at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Uh, but there's lots of big events, and I know Denver Public Library has shown up to 420 downtown here in Denver to promote themselves there. So I'd say get out anywhere that you can find customers and talk with them there. So we have about 5 minutes left here. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to bring up, that would be great.
And thanks to both Jennifer and Aaron for including their contact information. Feel free to email them if you have questions as well. Looks like we have a couple people typing, so we'll see what questions you guys have coming in before we wrap up for today.
Yes, Westworld and Cannabis are really good resources. Yeah, they both give really interesting reviews. And they read a lot like book reviews.
Yeah, and I found a lot of good resources on the cannabis. It's on the fact sheet there. There's some good, a lot of Jen's titles and more than she showed, and then also a lot of the resources that I grabbed from.
And once again, you can download those